I saw Dogman when I took cold medication. Dear Scary Stories NYC. When I was a kid, my mother would buy the kind of cold medicine that you only had to take once every 12 hours. No, not that brand you're thinking of. She would buy the store brand knockoff version, which was cheaper. I mean, I guess I would too now that I'm an adult, but I still have an aversion and a deep fear of taking that kind of cold medicine. Why? Because I saw Dogman the last time I took 12-hour cold medication. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember I had never felt so bad before. I've felt worse since, believe me, but this was the first great illness of my childhood. I had never had chicken pox, I had never gotten the flu, and when I had a cold, it was always gone by the next morning. Then, suddenly, I had this uncontrollable sneezing and a fever. It wasn't a big deal, but I didn't know that. It scared me because it was new to me and it felt really bad. So my mother gave me that store brand cold medicine, the first time I had been given the adult kind of cold medicine ever, I'm proud to say. And within minutes, I was passed out asleep in my bed. It was quite merciful, as I had been unable to sleep with my head cold. I don't know what time in the middle of the night I awoke, but I wasn't sure I was really awake when I was. I used to sleep next to a window out onto the backyard, only this time, there was a man standing in the way of my view. At first I thought he was a caveman like Fred Flintstone wearing an animal pelt, but his face didn't look like a caveman. His face looked more like a hairy demon of some kind. It was hideously ugly looking, but I couldn't accept that it was real, and I felt as though this must be one of those dreams you have as you're waking up. I tried to move my body and I wasn't sure it was working, so that must have meant I was still asleep, I thought. I waited for the monster to go away, or for me to be able to move my body, and I was very surprised when I suddenly found myself sitting up in bed, bringing my face even closer to this demonic type entity just on the other side of the glass from me. I looked more closely at him and saw that he was an extraordinarily hairy guy. I mean, in some places his hair looked like matted fur. In other places, it was curly and tangled. He appeared as though he lived outdoors and never brushed his hair or bathed. He was filthy, and in spots where the fur was sparser, his skin seemed nasty and blemished. It was somewhere around that point when I started to feel fear. I know that by the time I looked back at his face, my heart was beating fast. This was not even a caveman. This was some kind of an animal that stood up somehow on its hind legs. It had tall ears on top and eyes, kind of like a cat, but a long snout that put it more in the category of a canine than a feline. It had teeth, like you would expect in a dinosaur. This thing looked like he could take a Sasquatch in a fight, and I was just sitting there and watching him like he was an afternoon soap opera, wondering what was going to happen next. Realizing the danger I was in, I decided to try to act as casual as I could, and I began to slowly, boringly, climb back away from the dog-headed filthy beast man. As I reached to put my foot on the floor, I misjudged a bit and slipped off the bed with a sudden movement. This set the dogman off, barking loudly and pushing his face into the window so hard, I thought the glass was going to break. I screamed and ran out of the room to my parents' bedroom. They were pretty angry at me before I even got there. I screamed that there was a creepy man in a monster costume outside my window because, even at that age, I knew they wouldn't believe the actual truth. I mean, it took me over a minute of staring at that thing before even I believed the truth. I made my plea for someone to come back and see the creepy guy. My father refused to come to my room and see what was outside my window, but my mother did come. Think how different those days were to today, in terms of the parental reaction. That dogman, or whatever it was, had steamed up the window when it pressed its face to the glass, and the steam was still dissipating as we walked into the room. I knew my mother saw it because she walked faster the last few steps in order to see it up close while she still could. There were also other marks left on the glass, the kinds dogs leave when they press their noses up against windows. It was a dog, she told me, or maybe a wolf. It wasn't a man in a costume. She asked me again for a description and then just sat there looking confused. Finally, she called her sister and woke her up, and her sister woke up her husband, who used to work at a zoo a long time ago. He said it sounded like I saw a bear with mange, and so, to my mother, that was what I saw. My father was forced to put up tall fencing around our property because my mother didn't want sick bears breaking in to kidnap her poor sick son. Dad did it, but he resented me for it for years. I remember we were all having a fun cookout one summer afternoon when I was a teenager, and randomly, my father started pointing to that fence and telling me how much it cost him to build. He asked me when I was going to pay him back for that fence, since it was my imaginary bear that caused him to have to spend the money. Meanwhile, I never even said it was a bear. I said it was a guy in a monster costume. But inside, I knew what really happened. It was something life-changing, yet something I never admitted to anyone in the world before writing this to you. The real truth of the matter was, and I admit it today, I saw Dogman when I took cold medication. Dogman chased my bicycle. Dear Scary Stories NYC, bicycling is good for you. It's good exercise. It's an effective means of transportation. It can often be fun. And if you own your own bike, then it saves you money. In spite of all that, I've decided to take a little break from biking for a while, and I'll run on my treadmill in my basement instead. Nothing against biking. It's just that I got a bit shaken up when Dogman chased my bicycle. I don't want to tell you my name because I don't need that kind of celebrity, but I will admit where this took place. Downers Grove, Illinois. Specifically, I was biking near the Hidden Lakes Forest Preserve. It's a beautiful place, and I don't want to scare anyone off from using it, especially right now when we all need fresh air and sunshine. I was riding just before dawn in order to get my exercise in, and I think that was where I made my mistake. After all, it's a forest preserve over there. Animals are going to be around, and if you want to ride your bike around a forest preserve in the dark, you'd better bring some friends or take precautions. I did neither, acting as though I were riding around in my own backyard. The Dogman was there, however, to correct my misperceptions. I don't know when he first began chasing me. I only noticed when he already was behind me. It was the single greatest surprise of my life. I can't even compare it to anything else. It was unmistakably a Dogman. It had the head of a dog. It had the hind legs of a dog. And yet, it was standing up, looking down at me with unreadable, glowing white eyes. He was twice as big as I was, and he kept reaching forward, as though he were attempting to tear at the spokes on my back wheel. He was so much larger than I was. I'm certain that he could have caught up to me any time, and yet he seemed to always miss. He ran on his hind legs in a somewhat clumsy manner, bent over at the waist and reaching out toward my hind wheel. I rode faster and faster, and he always seemed to remain just exactly the same distance behind me, just barely out of reach. He never fell back, and he never advanced on me. And then, as I drove past two policemen who I suppose were on patrol, I stopped to point out the giant behemoth to them. To my utter surprise, there was nothing there. Not wanting to seem like a nut job, I just thanked the officers for their service to the city, and I rode away, still out of breath from being chased. Instead of going home, I stopped at a diner I knew and I ordered a breakfast, even long after the sun was up and the sky was bright. I felt frightened about cycling the rest of the way home, so I ordered a second breakfast. Like I said, I dusted off my treadmill in the basement after that incident, and I've been exercising at home, where there are no big, hairy, weird monsters trying to grab at my back wheel. What the hell was that all about anyway? Like, why the back wheel? Is that a dog thing? Or was he just trying to make me crash? I hope I never find out the answers to those questions. It's been a messed up time for me ever since. Dogman chased my bicycle. I nearly ran down a dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I had a dogman encounter just the other day, and it was also a powerful deja vu kind of synchronicity for me personally at the same time. This scared me so badly that my mind got completely blown, so please feel free to correct my grammar and make me sound like a science professor in your version. Then, when I play it for girls, I can tell them I really talk like that and impress them. I don't know if I should tell you about the synchronicity first, or the dogman. I guess I would want to hear about the monster first, so let me tell you what happened. Then stick around for why this was doubly weird for me personally. I was coming out of Atoka up in the middle of the Chickasaw and Choctaw nations, heading south to Dallas. I work part-time driving people, so you could sort of say I'm a modern-day cab driver. That night, I had driven someone home and was returning to Dallas on Route 75. In my opinion, that's the most direct route between the two places. Plus, there was zero traffic that night, and I find zero traffic relaxing. At least I did up until that night. Route 75 is pretty in the day in the part north of Sherman that I was driving on. It's just highways on the flat ground with grass between them. No streetlights, nothing fancy, just you and nature and the big blue sky. Except when it's nighttime and it's raining and you're kind of hydroplaning a little bit, you don't want to drive too fast. Plus, the only light is coming from your headlights, and you have to squint out onto the road to see things between the rain and your windshield wipers. I was thinking about getting over to Route 91, which I think has lights on it. Don't quote me on that. I should have double-checked before writing you this. Please fix that part so I can impress the ladies even further. Okay, all joking aside, this is the part of the story that I have a hard time joking around about. I am extremely grateful that neither I nor our guest star in the story got hurt in any way by this incident, but it came so close to being a very bad scene that I'm going to need a little more time to get completely over it. I have had a nightmare where I woke up thinking that I hurt him, and another time I dreamed that he leaped on the back of my truck and tried to climb inside the driver's seat window. Clearly, I'm still working it all out internally. But here's what happened in real life to the best of my ability to recall. Bam! The dogman was there, walking out in front of me. I'll describe him in a minute. I slammed on the brakes and I gripped the wheel, not knowing if I should turn it left or right. Was that thing going to take another step forward? Or maybe a step back? Or might it stand where it was? I stared through the downpour at the creature, trying to read anything at all from its face or body posture. Then, just as I was about to turn hard to the right, a random decision since I had to do something, the creature took a step back, and I instead swerved the pickup and myself to the left. We went right off the road and onto the wet grass, but somehow I didn't lose my traction. With no traffic around, I just drove, turning casually until I was back on the highway and eventually back in my correct lane. I saw the upright walking dog, who I still need to describe for you, heading off in the same direction he had been heading in all along and out of my view. I started cursing and swearing furiously. I was not sure who the hell I was screaming at, but I knew I was angry about it. It was like I was complaining that life was being unfair doing things like that to me. But really, nothing had actually happened. Something had almost happened, something had been avoided, but nothing really happened. I have nothing to complain about. I have a lot to be thankful for. Now, as for what the dogman looked like, he stood very tall, like a tall man. Not 8 feet tall, but well over 6 feet. He had long hair, which hung straight down as he was drenched in the rain. I could see that his hair was thicker and longer around the neck and shoulders, giving it the appearance of a kind of a lion's mane. The fur was thicker and thinner in other places too, but I only remember specifically that it got bushier on the lower legs. I was looking toward the head and shoulders to try to gauge what its next move was going to be. Then, I was looking down at its dog-like feet to see if it was going to move forward or back. To be clear, this was a 2-legged creature, although it also appeared canine. Throughout the incident, and again when I saw it running off in the end, the creature always stood on its hind legs. Now, as for its arms, I apologize that I completely vegged on observing them. I've read up on the different types of dogman since this happened, and really I can visualize the creature I saw with any of the different kinds of arms that people say they sometimes have. I saw a dog-like head, human, muscular shoulders covered in a lion's mane of dark, wet, dripping fur, and I saw it stand on large canine legs and feet. The incident happened without warning, and was fortunately over so quickly that I had not yet progressed to the point of concerning myself with its paws or claws or hands. I just didn't want to hit the thing, and I didn't. I was lucky. Now, as to why this was a synchronicity for me, that's kind of weird and a little hard to explain. I had just watched a documentary online about a musician named Call Me Steve Bators. If you look up how he passed on, you'll see it involved a cab, and it happened in Paris. So I drove on past the incident really shaken up, and around a couple of minutes later, just before I was about to pass through Sherman, I saw a sign for Route 82 heading east for, you guessed it, Paris. No, not Paris, France. Paris, Texas. So I didn't have my incident in Paris, but it was nearby. And it didn't involve a world-famous musician, but it did involve the only cryptid I've ever gotten to see with these eyes. Do I derive any meaning from this apparent synchronicity? No. I'm just a lot more confused about life in general now than I used to be. If there's a lesson in any of this, maybe it's that whenever you think life has gotten as crazy as it can get, brace yourself, because things are about to get kicked up a notch. It's a lesson to learn from 2020 in general. But for me, most especially, the other night when I nearly ran down a dogman. Hey, do any of you like these adult coloring books or digital coloring books? I've heard that some people like them, so I made this one. You can print them out and color them by marker or crayon, or you can color them digitally in whatever manner it is that people do things like that. No, I did not draw these images. I'm the editor and the archivist. The price is $2.09 for over 60 images of scary dogmen and werewolves. We got werewolves chasing ladies. This guy here is running from a werewolf that already bit off half of one of his arms, it looks like. It's a crazy and fun, wild time. I guess you can judge for yourself if it's good for kids. I don't know. I don't have kids myself, so I can't really tell you. I know I would have liked it when I was young, but I don't know if that counts because I was a weird kid. Anyway, the link is in the description and the pinned comment, so check it out if you'd like to. Since it's digital, you can actually get it on Christmas Day as a last-minute present. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.